Good morning. My name is John DiBlasi. I hope many of you know me. I also am sure many of you do not, but I've been a mediator with NAM for the past 12 years. And I'd like to welcome you to this webinar on virtual reality and mediations. Most importantly, before I begin, on behalf of the mediators at NAM and all of our staff, we hope you are all healthy and well. On a personal note, I live very close to Mount Sinai Hospital, where I've watched them erect a field hospital over the last 2 days. And I cannot emphasize you enough, even though I'm sure already that you are all practicing it, please practice safe distancing and do all of the things that you're being asked to do with respect to keeping yourself safe. The magnitude of it, from my perspective, being so close to the epicenter, is just astounding. So with that being said, one of the things that I'll say up front is that if you have any questions, you can send them in as I'm going through the webinar. And if you do that, what we're going to try and do is answer them at the end of my talk. So let me start off by saying this. If anybody could master this technology, you can. It is not that difficult, and that's the most important thing to remember. The only downside, as far as I see it from my perspective as a mediator working 8 hours, 9 hours a day doing mediations and arbitrations, is that I actually have to look at myself for that period of time. And in fact, we had a great story from one of my colleagues where he forgot that he was on camera and rolled his eyes when one of the attorneys was saying something, which of course everyone in the meeting picked up, and it was a humorous moment, but it is sort of the fact of this technology. People, generally speaking, are resistant to change, and we understand that. Very often that's due to complacency. You're comfortable with the status quo. A lot of people just do not want to buy into the utility of a technological advancement. And I think most significantly, and I hear this from a lot of people in terms of the feedback that we're getting, is there's a fear of mastering the technology. And one of the things I'm going to do today is really put your mind to rest about that, but also talk about why this technology is so important. So the purpose of today's webinar is to see the benefit of virtual mediations and arbitrations over the status quo, to show you the utility of the technological development, and to understand that in essence you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by giving it a try, especially at this time where we're all confined to our homes. And in terms of accepting technological advancement, just as a side story, one of the things that I always think about is the story of Eastman Kodak. Eastman Kodak failed to embrace digital technology. They stuck with film. They didn't want to give that up. It was highly profitable. They didn't want to look at anything else. And ultimately, you probably all know that Fuji came into the film business and they developed digital cameras. And the end of the story is that Kodak went out of business. The amazing thing about it in terms of their failure to embrace new technology is that a 24-year-old engineer employed by Kodak invented the digital camera, and they never accepted the fact that their own invention could potentially be radically changing in terms of how they do business. And ultimately, they went bankrupt. In terms of the success that we're having, and I'm just going to touch base on that briefly, because that I think is important to the buy-in. A lot of people ask me, well, our case is settling. Yesterday, I started at 7:30 in the morning. I finished at 6 at night. I had 4 mediations and 1 continuation of an arbitration. Out of the 4 mediations, 4 out of 4 settled. And in actuality, I'm finding that there's a higher settlement rate now. Amazingly, and of course that could be due to economic conditions, but the point is that the technology is working. The thing that we want to emphasize, and I apologize because I'm looking back and forth, I'm sure as many of you are, between 3 screens. The technology is so easy to use. I want to emphasize to you that when you do virtual mediation or arbitration with NAM, you have the support of NAM's IT department. Michael Moreo, who heads that department, is absolutely stellar. Sharon Peterson, who works in conjunction with him, and I know they're both on this webinar today, is incredible in terms of ensuring that this technology is easy to use and that there are no glitches. And the thing that I would tell you right off the bat, you keep on thinking probably, well, what do I have to do in terms of mastering this technology? The answer to that question is very simple. All you're going to have to do is log on to the meeting, and then the mediator runs the show, and there's nothing else for you to do. And that's as simple as it gets. People are talking about this technology for hours, doing 2-hour seminars on it. It's not that complicated. And I think when you make something that complicated, it increases people's fear that they're not going to be able to master this. And it is also going to be incredibly beneficial to your practice, obviously, during the time of this pandemic. And I'll talk about that in a little while. But I also believe that it's going to essentially spur a radical change in terms of how we do business. Not that it's going to replace face-to-face mediations and arbitrations, but I certainly think there are a lot of reasons that it's going to change the industry. Now, the current pandemic, as I said, has forced people to go from face-to-face mediations to virtual mediations because face-to-face is simply impossible. Of necessity, we have to accept change. And I think the way you should think about it is that this is an incredible opportunity that's going to give you the ability to try a new technology that has proven to be successful and is actually going to benefit you in many ways. One of the things that I think I want to dispel is the notion that this technology is new and that it possibly is a quick fix. This is not a quick fix. This is something that was not put together for the purposes of the present societal conditions, but it's something that NAM has had for many years. And what I want to do by way of example is talk about an arbitration that I had several years ago where we used this technology, and the buy-in was a little bit difficult, but the parties used it and ultimately it was very successful. I was involved in a complex commercial arbitration, and of course, prior to the arbitration itself, the hearing that is, we had numerous motions. Among those motions was a motion to preclude expert testimony, and it was decided that there was a necessity for a Frye-Daubert hearing. Now, here's the setup. We have attorneys on the East Coast, attorneys on the West Coast, witnesses on the West Coast, panel members on the East Coast, but not in the same location. And now we have the necessity for a 5-hour Frye-Daubert hearing. And ultimately, it was decided that the hearing had to take place in Los Angeles because of the 10 or 15 witnesses. The majority of them lived in close proximity to LA. So the question was, do we move this entire group of people across the country to California to take the testimony of 2 witnesses? And NAM suggested to us, look, as a cost-saving measure and also as a measure so as to, in other words, make scheduling easier, why don't we do it by video conference? And I will tell you, the panel, the attorneys were very hesitant to do this because you're taking testimony of live witnesses, but ultimately it was decided that the savings in cost and time was such, and the ease of scheduling was such that we would try it, and I will tell you that it went off without a hitch. Then we moved forward to the arbitration itself, which was held over a period of 9 days in Los Angeles. And when that arbitration was held, we reached the point where we were at the stage of the last witness who was going to be taken, and we literally ran out of time. Now you might say, well, couldn't you stay an extra day? Couldn't you run it into the evening? Well, we had run the second to last witness well into the evening. There was no way any of the panel members could stay because they were booked back wherever they were coming from in other mediations. More significantly, the attorneys could not stay because they were to be back at the city where they came from. And then the conversation obviously went to, well, how are we going to reschedule this? And after a long discussion with the parties, we were talking about putting this thing over for 3 months, which was just unacceptable. And I, at that point, said, well, why don't we go back to the technology that we used previously and do this by video conference? And everyone said, you know what, let's do it that way. If there's a problem, we'll have to reconvene. But the only other solution was everybody goes home, and then we bring this group of people back to Los Angeles, and they're going to stay there for another, you would figure 3 days because it's a day travel out, a day there, and a day back, and also the scheduling problem. We did the final witness 2 weeks later by video conference on a Saturday. It went off without a hitch. NAM managed the process. We had our IT people available, and everyone was absolutely satisfied with the way it went off. So let me just take a sip of water at this point in time. And I think that leads to what is the technology that we're using now? And we're using Zoom as our platform for mediations. And one of the things that people think about is, well, what is Zoom? You know, how effective is it? I know many of you may be using it already and you know of its effectiveness, but I'm sure by the same token, many of you have not used it, certainly not as extensively as I have and the other mediators at NAM are doing, where we're going, 7, 8, 9 hours a day using this technology consistently. And again, we're running it. There's nothing for you to do. But in terms of, what Zoom is, well, Zoom went public in 2019, and presently it is worth more than all of the major airlines in the United States combined. Which speaks for itself. Why is Zoom so popular? Well, there are a lot of reasons that were, I think, precisely given in an article in Inc. magazine. And the one thing that I would just say beforehand is that if you are concerned about the Zoom technology, it's so easy to go on their website, and they have a simple guide to how to run Zoom, and they do it in all very short videos. You'll find it's a piece of cake, but again, you're not really going to have to do that. But if you want to really understand what's going on behind the scenes with us, that's something you can do. Why is Zoom so popular? Well, in the first place, it's as easy to use as FaceTime. If you've never used FaceTime or Skype, please don't panic. Don't worry about mastering the technology. How do you begin? Well, it's very, very simple. You download the Zoom app, which is easy. Installation is a snap. It's fast and it's simple. And in terms of how you get on to the meeting with NAM, is once you download that Zoom app, it will say join a meeting, and it's as simple as entering an access code that we will give you, and you will be right into the mediation. And I would say to you at this point in time, until you get used to it in terms of signing in, there are usually a couple of minor issues that you'll experience the first time around. You just don't know what icon to click on. But again, NAM's IT department is always right there. They'll know you're coming on. They're ready to answer any question that you have. And of course, no technology is perfect, but the fact of the matter is they will get you through any issue that you may have. But again, I want to emphasize you're probably not going to have any issues. Why is it so popular? Well, it's totally accessible. You can use it on any device. You can use it on a PC, a laptop, an iPad. I had an attorney yesterday who appeared by iPhone. He was on for 2 hours. It worked perfectly well. Smartphone, the bottom line is you do not even have to have a camera in your device. For example, if you're shy in terms of being on camera, which of course I'm not, what you can very simply do is call in. You don't have to have a camera to do this. You could also call in by telephone and be part of the meeting. And the interesting part about that is you may say to me, and we'll get to this, well, if I call in, I'm not going to be part of the meeting itself. Yes, you will be. You will be in the joint meeting. You will be in the breakout sessions. You will enjoy all of the same benefits that somebody who's appearing by video camera. And you just don't have a visual up. But on my screen, for example, and on everyone else's screen, right now, for example, I'm seeing Sharon, who is behind me, helping me out. I'm seeing Mike, who's behind me, helping me out. But they're blacked out. I can't see them physically. So you could call in on this, and it's not going to be a problem. In addition to being able to access it easily, you can use it anywhere. You could be in your home, you can be in your office, you could be in a hotel, anywhere in the world, you can still attend the mediation as long as you have internet access or phone access. It's reliable, okay? I can't emphasize that enough. I've worked with it now for weeks. I've worked with it over the years. It's been tested by NAM repeatedly. Again, we've been doing this type of technology for many years. It's been tested by law firms, and the bottom line is that it's entirely reliable. If you want to think about its reliability for a second, as soon as the pandemic hit, Zoom stock went up 30%. Interestingly, there was another company called Zoom Technologies, who many investors mistook for the Zoom platform that we're talking about. And the stock in Zoom Technologies, which is not the same company, went up 75% until the FTC stepped in and realized that there was a problem here. People were investing in the wrong company. But what you're talking about is a 105% increase in stock in Zoom since the beginning of the pandemic. It sort of speaks for itself. The last thing is I will tell you, and this is really very interesting, people actually enjoy it. And this was set forth in the Inc. article. They've done surveys on it, and it is actually the feedback that we've been getting from NAM's clients. Once you use it once or twice, the bottom line is you're going to find it enjoyable. You can add a virtual background behind yourself. Like right now, you may think I'm in my office or possibly my beach house in the Hamptons, which of course I cannot afford. I am in a virtual room. In essence, I've put a background behind me. So if my dog runs in, you might see my dog, might not. My dog ran in the middle of mediation the other day, jumped on me, which was amusing, got right through the door. But the point is, if you don't want someone to see your living room, your dining room, your basement, whatever it happens to be, you can put this virtual background behind you. You can convince people that you have a sleek office in Soho or you got a house in the Hamptons. But the bottom line is you can create any background that you want. And that actually helps with respect to the quality of the video that you're going to see. It actually, in many cases, improves it because with the virtual background, you sort of pop out better in terms of the way the HD video works. And I will actually tell you, this is high definition. So I don't know how I appear to you now, but if you were coming in, you'd be coming in high definition. So it's not this blurry figure that you're seeing. In terms of how it works, all right, let's get a little bit into the technical factor, and I'm going to take another drink of water. In terms of how it works in the mediation sphere or the arbitration sphere, I haven't seen one like this, but you can have up to 49 people in the mediation. We've had cases where we've had 6 or 7 parties. I know we've morphed into, let's say, having 10 to 20 people on easily at any given time. And what happens when you come on is you will obviously see all of the parties, so you're going to see everybody in the room, and the mediator or the arbitrator can see everybody in the room. And again, this is easy because all you do is download a Zoom app and you enter in the meeting code and you'll pop right into the meeting. At that point in time, and you might have a little bit of a glitch, and we'll walk you through that. We literally have a tech person online at the beginning of every mediation. So if you're having a problem, which is very, very rare, they will straighten it out for you almost immediately. The second you come into the meeting, there's nothing else for you to do except tell me what you want. Okay, so you could talk about this technology for 1 hour or 2 hours, 3 hours. It really is that simple. There is nothing for you to do other than to log in. I take over and I handle the technology from there. NAM's mediators are trained to work with this technology. I will tell you from our end, it is quite complicated, but after you do it a couple of times, it's very easy. That's from our end. From your end, if I'm coming in as a participant in a meeting, there's very, very little for you to do other than to say to the mediator, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to speak privately, we need to be in a breakout room, we need to come back together and speak to the parties, we need to speak to you privately. Once you log in, all you have to do is name yourself. Now, we can name you when you come into the meeting, but prior to coming into a meeting, actually Zoom will prompt you to enter your full name and your email address. So what I would say to you, this is just a quick tip. What's important is that you should name yourself and use your full name. When you log in, you'll also be required to give your email address. Why? Sometimes people have logged in, JT from X law firm. That doesn't help me and it confuses everybody else. So use your full name. That's a quick tip. The other thing that usually will be a problem for people, it's not really a big problem, but this is a minor tip and we actually can correct it for you. When you log on, at the bottom of your screen, you will have a microphone, you will have a video camera icon, and all you have to do is sometimes you'll be muted, you'll have the video camera icon, and that'll be the left lower side of the panel. That's right in front of me. All you have to do is click on the mute button, take yourself off mute, click on the stop video button, which causes your video to work, and you're good to go. I mean, that's basically it. If that doesn't happen, I can literally, or NAM's IT department can send you an invitation with a link. It'll turn on your video, it'll turn on your microphone. we will work it out for you. And I cannot emphasize that enough, that the IT department at NAM stands behind you. You're not going to have problems. If you do, it's maybe the first mediation and they'll be very minor. So what will you see when you log on? This is a question that people often ask me. They're like, how is it possible? If we have 10 people, we have clients, we have people from out of state, how is this going to happen? Everybody logs in. Yesterday, I had several people logging in from Oklahoma, Nebraska, Michigan. And once you log in, everybody's going to see everyone in attendance, including the mediator. Again, the name of each party will be below their image. One of the things that I always do at the beginning of the session, even if I happen to know you, I have everybody identify themselves and state who they represent or what corporation they're from. And that's really the extent of it at the outside. You will see everybody else. You will see me, you will see everybody else. It'll be right up there on the screen. So very quickly, what you're going to find in the joint session, it is the same as if you were attending in person. It has gotten to the point for me that I don't even think about it. The fact of the matter is it's just like any other mediation. We have a joint session. Everybody has the opportunity to be heard. The way the technology works is when someone begins to speak, their box will pop up in front of me, so I know that that's the person who's speaking. Not that it's really that difficult because you can see them speaking, but if there are a lot of people on the screen, it's helpful because it brings that up and it brings that to your attention. And you will be in the joint session. And again, you'll find that the quality in terms of the video itself is usually crystal clear. And in the unlikely event that somebody has a touchy internet connection or is having problems, we can always have them phone in and participate that way. We just can't see them visually. But the big question that comes up is, what about breakout rooms? All right, so that's what people don't understand. How could we do a mediation where you need a breakout room? And the bottom line is, first of all, if I have a one-on-one mediation, I don't need a breakout room unless you have your client with you and you want to be in a breakout room with them. What I do with a one-on-one mediation is I simply put each party on what we call a hold while I'm speaking to the other. Some people will say to me, well, I'm concerned about privacy. What if the other person overhears us? And I know classically, if we're doing a teleconference in the office, people are unsure, is that party actually off? Well, we know the party is actually off once we speak to either side individually because they disappear from the screen. I can see that. There is nothing to worry about in terms of confidentiality, in terms of privacy. It is really a fail-safe system where there is no way to fail and it's totally safe. Once you're out, you're out. Everybody knows you're out. They can't see you and we are all secure. I am watching a participant list, so I'm actually, not that I need to, I can confirm visually by looking at it. In addition to the fact that the visual image is gone and the name is gone, you literally disappear from the screen if it's a one-on-one. So the bottom line is that I can also, at any time I want to, if it's a one-on-one mediation, bring you back in, speak to you as I deem fit, and I could also merge both of you. If someone else comes into the meeting and I want to put them with you, I can create a breakout room and do that. And the bottom line is you get to the point where you say, well, how does that work? How is this really similar to a normal mediation? You're putting people in separate rooms, or you're breaking them up. It's the same as a normal mediation. I put A in a breakout room, I put B in a breakup room, and then I'm tired of both of you, and I go get a cappuccino. Okay, typically you all know, and I'm half joking when I say that, because sometimes people need to calm down in the middle of a mediation, but we can pace it just like we would in a mediation if you were doing face-to-face. And we know sometimes as mediators, it's not a big secret, we have to slow things down. So we can slow it down just as we would do in a normal mediation. We can speed it up just as we would do in a normal mediation. You'll go back and forth very easily like you would in a normal mediation as a mediator, going back from one to the other, from one to the other, back and forth. Now, the question is, what happens with breakout rooms with multiple parties? Well, that's really interesting, and I'll take another sip of water. Well, we have breakout rooms. The mediator creates the breakout rooms. You don't have to worry about that. I will create the breakout rooms. I will put whoever you need in the breakout rooms in the breakout rooms. I can create rooms for you, for your client, for your representatives. I can split up anybody any way that I need to. I can bring certain of the conference rooms together. Let's say we have 6 conference rooms, breakout rooms. We have 2 parties that want to speak. I can merge those 2 parties together. That often happens where, let's say, defendants want to talk to one another during the middle of mediation. They needed to speak separately. Now they want to speak together. They don't want me to be in the conference at that point in time, or they do want me to be in the conference. That's easy. We can do it very easily. The point is, everybody gets hung up on, wow, what do I have to do to master this technology? Nothing. I'm running the show. So I can do that. I can deal with breakout rooms very, very easily. And all of NAM's mediators are trained to do this. One of the things that comes up, and someone asked me this question based on an article that I wrote several weeks ago on this type of mediation, doing it virtually, is how do you know when I need you to come in and speak with me? Okay, well, there are several ways that I will do that. And how do I not accidentally overhear your conversation? Well, first and most simply, if I join your meeting, you're going to hear a chime that means I'm joining your meeting. So you're going to be warned when I'm coming in. The second thing is that if I decide, let's say it's an emergency and I need to speak to you, some information was just made available to me where I know I need to talk to you and to convey that immediately. I can close your conference room, your breakout room, with a 60-second notification. So in other words, what will happen is you'll get a 60-second notification. Basically, that's a cue that I need to speak to you. And what will happen is it'll take you out of the breakout room and bring you back to me. I call that the state of emergency fail-safe button. If I need to get you back very quickly, I won't join in. I'll just hit close breakout room number 1. You come right back into me. So you don't need to understand this technology, but the point is it allays your fear as to how this is going to work because it's very, very simple. What if you say to me, well, we want you to come back in, but we're not sure when we need you to come back in. Well, the option that I don't like, but some people use, is they'll say, would you please come in about 10 minutes? That's okay. I can do that. We can work that way. But how many times, as a mediator, do I hear that people say to me, I only need 5 minutes and you can come back in. And then I come back in 5 minutes and they say, well, we need another 5 minutes. And then it's another 5 minutes. And then it's another 10 minutes. The bottom line is I want you to have the time that you need and not be interrupted, just as we would in a real mediation, that was face-to-face, as opposed to a virtual mediation. So what we do very, very simply is you have the mediator's email address or you have my cell phone number. And what I'll say to you is, look, the second that you're ready to speak to me, shoot me an email, shoot me a text. I actually like text. That works very, very well. And I'll just get a text that said, we're ready in breakout room 1, or we're ready, John, Judge, whatever you want to call me. I'm ready, Bill. This is Bill. I'm ready, and to talk to you. It's very, very easy to do do it that way. And again, the mediator runs everything once you're in the room. The bottom line is that we can mold it for you any which way you want. So again, there is no reason to be afraid of this technology, because all you have to do is log in, let us take over. NAM's IT department is behind you. And if there are any glitches, we will help you through it. The experience is going to be, obviously you're not face-to-face, but it is amazing to me. Yesterday, doing as many mediations as I did, after the first one in the morning, I am not even thinking about the fact that it's not face-to-face. It's just business as usual for me. So let's just talk about, and we'll sort of wrap up with this, what are the benefits? Because there are benefits that are unique to this process. And again, I would say to you that this was not a quick fix that was developed by NAM. We've been using it for years, but the demand was just not there because, again, people say, well, I like the face-to-face mediation. Why would I do it virtually? I don't know how this technology is going to work. I'm afraid that there are going to be glitches. The bottom line is now, very often, as the old saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. And, it's horrible that, there are things that come up like a pandemic that would cause us really to move towards this technology. but I have a background in emergency services, and one of the things that we always spoke about is business continuity. Simply, this form of ADR process allows you to continue your ADR practice uninterrupted. It is sufficient to prevent any type of delay in your mediations or arbitrations. And keep in mind, long before this pandemic, there was 9/11, there was Hurricane Sandy, there were a whole host of things that took place in terms of some type of crisis or natural disaster that impeded people from attending mediations. I don't want to say, and I sincerely hope this never happens again, but that is a fact of life. The second benefit, reduction of cancellations. Well, we all know as practicing attorneys, a lot of times a judge will say, unexpectedly, I need you at such and such a place on such and such a day to do a deposition, and that conflicts with mediation. Or I need you in the court for a morning conference, and then you don't have enough time to travel to the mediation. So the belief is, and what we're seeing is a radical reduction in cancellations. People just don't cancel because it's so easy to fit it into their schedule. And speaking about fitting it into their schedule, this creates flexibility in scheduling issues, and I talked about that early on with respect to the arbitration that I did in Los Angeles. Scheduling issues will often delay the process. We know how hard it is to set up multi-party mediations. A lot of it is due to the fact, obviously, of people's schedules, and a lot of it deals with traveling. The flexibility to have all or some of the parties appear virtually really makes it a lot easier to schedule your mediation. And if you're worried about it going out too long, and we hear that some people always want to get to mediation quickly, but between the schedule of the mediator, the schedule of the arbitrator, the schedule of the parties, the schedule of the clients, and they're traveling to the face-to-face mediation, that's difficult to put together, especially in multi-party cases. It improves ease of scheduling. In terms of savings of time, time is money. The bottom line is that whether you're going to travel locally or you're coming, let's say, from White Plains to Manhattan or Long Island to Manhattan, the bottom line is there's time built into that is ultimately being wasted. You might have 2 or 4 hours, depending upon where you are, that is lost because you're going to the face-to-face mediation. And certainly I'm not saying to you that virtual is going to displace face-to-face, but it is an incredibly attractive option. Think about the situation where you have to travel cross-country, the example that I gave in the arbitration that I was speaking about. We were traveling from New York, from Florida, from Connecticut to Los Angeles. People in Los Angeles were bringing in witnesses from all parts of the West Coast. Had that arbitration been done virtually, it probably would have decreased the cost to the parties in terms of travel, meals, hotel by about 75%. And then finally, and I think it's obvious, the reduction in cost. The virtual use of technology in this type of technology is going to reduce, if not eliminate, your travel costs and other expenses associated with getting to the mediation. And additionally, you are gaining the time that you would have otherwise have lost by attending the face-to-face mediation or arbitration. So you're actually going to be able to utilize that time better to obviously be working on other cases and making money on those other cases. So we could give you every good reason in conclusion to try this new technology. Particularly given the circumstances that we have now. There is very little to lose, but the proof is in the pudding. And from our standpoint, what that comes down to is settlement rate and feedback. The settlement rate, I believe, is actually higher with virtual mediations right now. And some may say, well, people are more highly motivated to settle because of current economic conditions. I think that's true in part, but I don't think it's true entirely. I think face-to-face gives you so much flexibility that it is actually ticking up in terms of the settlement ratio. And the other thing is that I think you're going to find it incredibly compelling in terms of how easy it is to mediate a case virtually and get as good an experience as you would if you were appearing at a mediation. So I've gone exactly 34 minutes. I know that we were budgeted to go for approximately 45, and I did want to leave some time for questioning because I know people always do have questions. So I know Mike Morio is standing by to give me the questions, and I am happy to answer them. I'm just going to go to Q&A, and I think I can pick them up. Okay, give me 1 second to take another sip of water. Okay, now see, this is how easy the technology is. I have a Q&A at the bottom of my screen. I pull it right up. How do you submit documents or photos for consideration during mediation? I'll add to that during arbitration. I had that yesterday. Our tech department will work through that with you in terms of how you display them on the screen. The arbitration that I had yesterday was a situation where we needed demonstrative evidence with respect to a roadway where an accident took place. It is very easy to get that up on the screen without getting into the specifics of it. NAM's IT department will work through it for you. And again, the follow-up question I have is with respect to documents and exhibits. You can handle it that way. We then get
Judge, I'll handle this one here.
Yep.
Okay, great. So one of the questions was from Devin was, how come we don't see the features on the bottom of the screen right now that you were discussing earlier, which was starting the video, mute, and those types of options. Devin, and to all, just a quick answer to that one there is we're in a webinar right now, which is different than a meeting. So some of the things that have been discussed, you would see in a meeting. As you're ready to try hearing cases with NAM, we can always set up a prearranged time for you to do a quick test. So we're happy to do that, but unfortunately during a webinar, we can't display those settings that were discussed earlier in the webinar.
Okay, the next question, I cannot read it. Okay, the next question I have is, if you have a student at home taking virtual classes, also on Zoom, will that slow my mediation on Zoom hosted by the mediator? Only to the extent that it affects the broadband on your wireless. Quite frankly, I don't think it's going to affect it any more than, for example, making a phone call. The reason being is that, and Mike probably could explain this to you a lot better than I would, with respect to a phone call, you're using very little broadband, or with respect to this type of technology, you're using very little broadband with respect to the Zoom process. You're not really downloading, in fact, you're not downloading anything. So I do not think, can I tell you, actually, I'm going to tell you this. I can tell you it doesn't affect it. Why? Because my stepdaughter is here every day. She's in the public school system in the city of New York. She is online right now. She's in the middle of a Zoom class. My wife just heard the question and she signaled to me, Veronica. So actually, I can tell you from personal experience, it has no effect because she had about 5 hours of classes yesterday. They ran simultaneously with the almost 8 hours of mediations and arbitration that I was involved in. It doesn't affect it at all. So I'll just leave the technical explanation and tell you from personal experience that's not a problem at all.
Judge, can I just reiterate on that? Again, it is based on everybody's personal connection to the internet. So obviously, if you have a dial-up, you're going to be more susceptible to lag than somebody who has, say, for instance, 100, 200, or 300 megabit connection in their home. So again, it does vary based on your own personal internet connections. Just keep that in mind. Go ahead.
Okay. Next question from John. Can or will you provide a separate room before the hearing in order to prep clients? The answer is yes. We can set up multiple rooms. That's not a problem. Mike, anything to add to that?
Typically, we don't do that. Usually we do the rooms following, but what we would do is once the meeting starts, if you need to do a quick prep, we could usually do breakout rooms. This question is geared more towards that prep of a client. I would probably say do that offline prior to the hearing, only because the start time is the start time. And we don't usually do the breakout rooms until we actually start the meeting. What do you think about that, Judge? I mean, I'm just trying to think of practicality.
Well, I had that issue come up yesterday, and the way that I handled it is we just had everybody log on. We got everybody together. Counsel with his client indicated that he needed time to speak with the client. And what I did is I immediately created breakout rooms. I put him in a breakout room with the client. Then I could pull him out as need be. So it's very easy to do that. The one thing that I will say, which is a bit more challenging on this, is we do have to stick to the amount of time that you booked as general process. There are times where yesterday I was probably running about 15 minutes behind on each case. So what I would say to you is book a sufficient amount of time to ensure that we do have enough time to put you in a breakout room. And let's say you need 15 minutes at the beginning of what otherwise would be the beginning of the mediation. We can do that. Certainly, if the mediator has nothing booked afterwards, he can continue on with you. And then the last alternative that we offer you is if you do have to take some time prepping your client, that runs into the mediation time, where the mediation is going to have to run over. If I do have a case after your mediation, what we do is suggest to you that you can call in later on in the day when we have a break and we have a block of time that we could give you. That is something that is different and that's less than optimal. But right now, I don't see any problem with it because if the mediator is actively engaged in managing the mediation, you can keep people pretty close to the time allotted, as long as they, let's say, haven't booked a 4-hour mediation for 1 hour. Next question: how are you handling sign off and confidentially, and sign off acknowledging settlement agreements? If I understand the question correctly, at the end of every mediation, there's a post-mediation agreement. That post-mediation agreement is identical to the one that we use at NAM. Very simply, what I do is I get the consent of all parties. I print into the post-mediation agreement the fact that the agreement has been signed by the parties virtually, that the authorization has been given to sign it. I sign off of it, off on it, and then I either screenshot or scan the post-mediation agreement, and you will have it within 15 minutes of the mediation itself. Next question: there is media coverage today about privacy concerns with Zoom. How are you addressing this? Michael, I haven't seen that.
It is an ongoing process, and we do appreciate that question. So again, we are a partner with Zoom now for well over a year and a half, 2 years, something to that effect. We've been dealing with different issues regarding Zoom privacy throughout the years that have always been addressed properly. Our concerns right now mostly are, making sure that these sessions are encrypted. We also run meeting sizes that are actually manageable, meaning what we're seeing in the media coverage today is the concern of people just coming in on a random meeting in classroom environments in which, you have 30, 40, 50, 60 people in a classroom, and then all of a sudden just somebody comes in and starts listening in. When we have, on average right now, between 3 and 7 participants, and within, I'm going to say about 15 minutes, everybody's going into a breakout room. Anybody that is just randomly putting numbers in and joining our meetings, they're going into a room completely alone or with a hearing officer. At that point, that's also why IT is also on. We're constantly monitoring. We're seeing who is joining meetings. We can put those people into a hold pattern until we know exactly who they are by identifying them. But lastly, we have a setting that's set up right now that once we remove a participant from our meetings, they cannot come back in. That's very important for us, because if we don't want you in the meeting, you can't sneak your way back in again. So, and again, it's a fluid question because it's always going to evolve in the weeks to come. And we're constantly monitoring and making adjustments as we need to. So we do appreciate the question. We are constantly monitoring it. And I'm sure even after today, we might even make a few more adjustments to our meetings.
And I'm sorry, Mike, you done?
Yes, I'm done. I was passing it on to you.
Okay, I can only see your head during this webinar. In an arbitration, will the camera be situated in such a way that I can make certain that witnesses are not reading from any documents? The answer is yes. I had that yesterday. First of all, what I do is at the beginning of the arbitration, I will tell the parties that under no circumstances are they to be reading from a document unless they tell us that, and so state that before they do so. Of course, you're going to say, well, why would we trust them? It's very simple. We can have them move back from the camera so we can see the lower part of the body. As you know, I can move away, and I'm not positioning the camera ideally right now because I'm remaining in a seated position, but I can move back so that you could see the rest of me. In fact, we were laughing right before the mediation came on because I came from outside the room into the room, and it actually appeared that I was walking down this virtual hallway up to the camera. So I think that best answers that question. Last question that I have in front of me is, in order for the parties to speak privately with our clients who could be in a different location from counsel, do we need to FaceTime or call them on our own, or will a NAM Zoom breakout room accommodate this? Well, certainly you could always FaceTime them or call them on your own. If you can FaceTime or call them on your own if you want to, but the NAM Zoom breakout room will accommodate this. They can log into the session as we discussed initially, and we can put you and your client in a breakout room. I know there is a fear of being overheard in terms of attorney-client conversations. The bottom line is, as I said earlier, and Mike addressed the security issues, once I put people on hold or I put them in breakout rooms, they literally disappear from the camera. I know for a fact I can't hear them. So if I can't hear them, there's no way that you could hear them. I mean, unless there was some type of security glitch. I don't think anybody is, particularly lawyers, are technologically that advanced that they would be able to crack the code to get into your breakout room. So from my perspective, it has been a fail-safe system. It has worked perfectly up until this time, and I've had no complaints either with respect to that or the use of exhibits. Can you address examinations and arbitrations? I assume you're talking about direct or cross-examination. It was very simple. For example, when we did the Frey-Daubert hearing, we had an attorney in one location questioning a witness in another location, two members of the panel in New York, one member of the panel in Florida. We had the attorneys who were going to cross-examine the witness. It's really seamless. I don't know how to explain it other than that. There was absolutely no problem with it. And this was a complex case. Certainly when you get into Frey-Daubert hearings, that's not easy. I just want to clarify, we would need to download Zoom on one of our devices. Then for the mediation or arbitration, we would be given the sign-in information. Yes, that's correct. You download Zoom onto any one of your devices, no matter what type of device it is. When the mediation is scheduled, you will be provided with the emails of all of the parties, as well as a ID number or a login number that you will just very simply enter into the Zoom app, along with your name and your email address, and you're going to come right into the meeting. Your Honor, what is the cost of using Zoom? This is great. Nothing. Okay, unless you decide to open your own account, buy licenses. NAM has bought licenses, obviously, to operate this system. We have multiple licenses. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a free download. Does the mediator control who speaks or who is heard? No, I do not. I can certainly mute people. So if someone's getting unreasonably boisterous during the course of a mediation or arbitration, I can mute them. But the fact of the matter is what has occurred, generally speaking, and I was worried about that, people talking over one another, which of course we all know lawyers never do. But I was worried about that. It hasn't been a problem. People take their time, actually, I think more so. And I'm going to say it's actually peculiar. I think they're more respectful while they're using Zoom because they know they'll be talking over someone else. Next question. Will the telephone login numbers get overloaded? Will each phone number only accommodate one caller or multiple callers? Mike, you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So the answer is each meeting accommodates up to 300 participants. That is managed by Zoom. It will not get overloaded. It's basically using voice over IP technology. It's a great question. A lot of people get concerned about that. But again, it is all managed by the Zoom Operation Center. We have, again, run cases in which we are sitting on not parties, but participants. I think the largest one we had in the past few weeks was about 17 participants. I don't see many cases that go larger than that, but again, we have not seen any overloads whatsoever so far, and I don't expect to.
And the next question is, I agree, preparing of clients should be done prior to the mediation. I certainly agree with that. That's the easiest way to deal with it, but let's say you need 5 minutes to talk to your client, or you want them put into a breakout room immediately. Once we get everybody online, we can put you in a breakout room immediately with your client. If you need 5 or 10 minutes to talk to them, just as you will during the course of the mediation, you'll be able to do that. Next question. Sorry, I missed how to handle documents, evidence submitted for the hearing. Well, there are two ways to handle this. Number one, I'm getting submissions on a daily basis that are sent to me by email, not by hard copy, certainly at this point in time. So I have all the exhibits. So if a party says to me, Judge, I'm referring to exhibit X, Y, or Z in my brief, that's very, very easy if they want me to look at it. If it's something like a piece of demonstrative evidence that they want to put up, they can put it up on the screen. I had that exact scenario done yesterday. Mike, you just want to address that for a second?
Sure, absolutely. So I think where people are getting a little confused, and like you're addressing right now, Judge, it's not the pre-submission, but during the middle of the case. Say, for instance, we have a PowerPoint presentation. You can absolutely, there's something that's called screen sharing that is available. You might not see it right now in the webinar, but it is absolutely available in all of our meetings. It was great because just the other day I had jumped in on a meeting with one of our other hearing officers, and it was the first time she actually experienced the presentation taking place, and she says that was absolutely fantastic. So yes, we do have the ability for screen sharing. PowerPoint is probably your best bet, but this gentleman that was also doing his presentation was just sharing photos off of his desktop. So again, the technology is there. We can guide you through it along the way during the meeting, during the hearing, and again, it's great technology to use. So it was an excellent question.
Okay, so the next question is a concern about others overhearing conversations, especially when they're using virtual backgrounds. There could be someone else in the room. Participants can easily record conversations without others knowing by placing a recorder out of sight. Well, that could be accomplished in a face-to-face mediation in a joint session where somebody has a concealed recording device. They're very simple to obtain and very simple to use. So the concern is that you could have that happen in a face-to-face. What you would know in a face-to-face is who is actually in attendance. What I, generally speaking, do is say to the parties, and I would rely on their word as officers of the court, we have an understanding that on your end, there is no one else listening to the conversation, that under no circumstances can these conversations be recorded. So if there is someone else present with you, we need to know that. And of course, you're under an instruction by the mediator or arbitrator that you're not allowed to record the proceedings. I'm going to rely on the attorneys as officers of the court to do that. I'm also going to rely on their clients or their instructions to their clients that they abide by that. Next question. One of the benefits, I'm getting so many questions here, they keep on flying up. One of the benefits for insurers is the opportunity to see the plaintiff. How will we be able to do this in a virtual setting? At the outset of the mediation, all parties will log on. Assuming the attorney who's running the meeting, who's handling a matter for that client, consents to the client being seen. If they're on the mediation, obviously we can put them in a breakout room. We can also bring them into a joint session. So if their attorney consents, they can see and speak to them. How are you handling or using documents for direct and or cross-examination of testimony at a hearing? Again, I think Michael answered that question. You can put the documents up, or you can refer to the submissions that you've given us. Do parties in the mediation have the ability to record the mediation, Michael?
Our meeting settings do not allow for recording. We have disabled that setting.
Question, Judge, are you seeing us right now? I could have, but I opted not to see you and just look at myself for this entire process. But as I said, I opted not to see you. If my computer does not have a camera, what appears on your side? There's a signal that indicates to me that you do not have a camera. So I know that you do not, and you do not have to appear with a camera. You don't need one to attend the meeting. We are doing a Zoom mediation tomorrow and provided the mediator with video to review as part of our submission. Although all parties have already seen the video, will this be accessible should any party want to address it? Michael? Michael, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I was just reading the question again. Although all parties have already seen the video, will this be accessible? Oh, anybody want to address it? Yes, so long as if you guys want to, again, share this video, videos can also be part of that screen share process. So yes, the answer is yes, so long as one of the parties still has accessibility to that video, they can share it on their screen.
And last, because I have a mediation to go to in 6 minutes, I'll try and get through these last two questions. There's a recording symbol in the upper left-hand corner. Is this being recorded? Yes, the webinar is being recorded for rebroadcast. If a party does not have access to Zoom, will there also be a call-in number for that party to join the hearing? We can absolutely do that. So with that last question being answered, I am literally 5 minutes away from my first mediation of the day. I hope to see you, if not in person soon, virtually, and have a great day. Thank you so much.